Okay guys, so now we've cut our squares, now it's time to arrange them. Now this might take you a little bit of time to get them to a point where you're happy with them, and you need to sort of run your eye through a lot of the different paths and check that you're happy with how they all meet up. What I'm going to do is show you how I'll arrange these fabrics. Now this was a half jelly roll, I had 20 strips. It was a little bit problematic because I wanted to do my groups of 4 and I had enough to make 5 groups of 4. However, I only had 4 darks. So what I'm going to show you is how I'll get around that. And then we'll move on to this fabric, which is what I plan to use for a lap quilt. And I will be doing the zigzag effect. But firstly, I'll show you how it would look if I chose to do another pattern. Okay, so I'm going to start with these fabrics, and I know that I need to go 4 across and 6 down, and I want to place them randomly to see how that will look. So if you want to do the same, just work out how many you need to go across and down and start at that point. There's only one rule when we're placing them, and that's we need to place them across, and then the next one that we place next to it needs to be coming down, and then we place this one next to it again going across, and so on. And then when we put the next block here, we'd be wanting that one to come down. And that's the only real rule when making a rail fence quilt. Okay, so I just placed those out really randomly, and I'm really happy with how they worked out. What I did try to do was make sure no 2 fabrics were next to each other, because I don't like that. But other than that, this is really random. You might want to make a few little rules for yourself when you're placing them out random. You might decide that you always want the dark to be facing up. So for example, my darks here, you might decide that this one should be switched around and then also facing up. You might want to have a rule that all your darks, because they do really stand out, aren't next to each other like this, because it automatically pulls you in to that V there. Can you see that? So it's just a case of having a switch around and working out what you think is going to look the best. But again, there's no right or wrong way, just have a play. Now I'm going to change these up, and I'm going to show you how it would look if I did a zigzag. Okay, can you see how I've got a zigzag effect there? I've got a grey and polka dot one there, I've got the darkest one running through the middle there, then I've got the grey and polka dot happening again here, and then I've got the lighter grey one here. Now the lighter grey one isn't ideal, but remember I told you I did run out of dark grey fabric. I only had 4 dark grey strips to work with. A way around that could have been I could have added a dark grey fabric from my stash and used it for that strip, and that would have actually helped that. But I don't mind this, and when I'm quilting it, I could make sure I quilt the zigzag so it really helps it stand out a bit better. The only thing that I'm not liking here, and it's only happened once that I can see so far, is I have these 2 fabrics sitting next to each other. And that's kind of my pet hate when I'm doing a quilt. So what I'll do is I'll simply swap those around, and I'll put that one there. And that one there, and now I don't have my 2 foxes touching. So to create the zigzag effect, you just need to place the fabrics that stand out the most or the darkest that were on the ends of your blocks next to each other. So if we look at this one, we've got the dark grey polka dotty looking one here at the end of the block, and then I've got it right next door at the bottom. And then we come down and it's on the end here again. And then again, it's right next door at the bottom. And you can see it happening. So you just need to make sure they're touching. Remember, I don't like touching, but when we're doing a zigzag, we need them to touch to create that zigzag effect. Oh, my cameraman just pointed out that these 2 here are touching. So to fix that, I'll just simply swap these 2 over. And now we don't have little foxes touching each other. And In case you're wondering how this quilt will work, because it is a bit of a funny shape, what I plan to do is add sashing on either side just to make it a little bit wider so it will be a perfect size for a cot quilt. Now I'll move on to my second lot of fabric and show you how I'll work that one out. So now let's look at a couple of ways we could arrange this fabric. Just randomly placed these out, and as you can see it looks quite random. I still think it looks quite pretty. Because there are only 4 fabrics, it does start forming patterns quite easily, so you just have to make sure you don't accidentally do a pattern through half of it and then not, if you do want to go for that really random look. So now let's try another pattern. Okay, with this pattern we've kind of got a pinwheel look happening. Can you see here with the mustards? It goes down, across, down and across, like a pinwheel. And we've got that within groups of 4 of our blocks. For every 4 blocks we've got this pinwheel happening, and then we've got it happening again with the light ones here. Can you see here we've got another pinwheel happening? And that's quite pretty if you wanted to go for that look. And then we're going to do the zigzag look, which of course is my favourite. Okay, so now I've got my zigzag effect. Can you see how the mustard colour is coming through on a zigzag? That was my first colour in my strip of 4 fabrics. And then you can see the cream coming through as well, and that was my 4th colour in my 4 strips of fabric. So I've got 2 zigzags happening, and what you need to do to achieve that, don't forget, is we've got here, for example, I've got my mustard to the left, then I've got this block with my stripes facing this way, with my mustard touching this mustard here, and then we've got this block next to it, and the mustard again is touching this mustard, and then we come down, and this strip of the mustard is touching this one, so we've got all the fabrics always touching, and that's to get the zigzag effect. You might not have 4 colours for your quilt top, and that's okay. You might have grouped your fabrics in darks or in reds or in lights or whatever you chose to do, and you will still achieve this zigzag effect by placing them this way, so long as they are all similar, like I said, either dark or red or what have you. So you can also take a photo, and that could help you see what you think of it. And by taking a photo, somehow it looks a little bit different on a screen, and that's a good way to check that everything's in the right place and you're happy with it. I know some of the ladies have been turning the photos into black and white, and what that does is it just helps you see how the shades are. You don't want all your dark colours or all your really light colours in one spot, particularly if you're doing a random quilt. So by doing those black and white photos, it does help to make sure your fabrics are evenly spread out across your quilt. Of course, only if you were doing a more random look than this. If you're doing the zigzag, you really have to stick with trying to choose those darker edges to create those zigzags. So now, like I said, I'll place the rest of my squares out to get my rest of my zigzags, and then I've got my little cards here, and you know what to do with these. You can either print these out, or you can just write them down on a piece of paper and recreate them, but I'll place them on the top here, numbering my columns. And I'll pin those on. So we're pinning them onto to that top row, numbering the columns. This is column 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. So if you're clever, you can just stack them. And if you'll remember how to sew them in the right order, then go for it. But if you're like me and will get all confused and in a pickle, what I like to do is take this one, fold it up, and just loosely pin it, fold it back down, take the next one, fold it up, pin it, and do that for every single column. So that way we can't get confused what are our columns and what are our rows and in what order do we sew them in. And when you've done that, just carefully fold them up, ready for sewing. Okay everyone, it's quite a big week. What I need you to do is take your sewing strips and cut them into squares. Remembering you do need to measure them because there was a little bit of room for error. So I want you to measure them and make sure you're not short by, let's say, 1/4 of an inch on some, because if you are, you will need to cut them all down so that when we are sewing them together, you're going to get perfectly matched up seams. We want the nicest finish that we can get. And when it comes to laying them out, just have fun, take your time, there's no rush. Remember, you could take a photo and that might help you see if you've made any errors, if there's anything you need to improve. But you know me, I just want you to have fun, enjoy the process, and I can't wait to see all the beautiful ways you've chosen to lay them out.